Coming up next, things are about to go bump in the night for Nathan Hughes and Karen Hassan on Paranormal Encounters.
Since the beginning of history, people have reported sightings of ghosts in their homes and other locations. Having grown up in what I believe to be a haunted home myself, I've decided to interview people who've had other paranormal encounters.
Ghosts. Everybody knows someone who's seen one, or perhaps have had an experience themselves. But do they really exist?
Why do spirits cross over to the world of the living? Do they have a message to communicate? Or is there something they want to tell us about the afterlife?
So are you a skeptic?
Or are you a believer?
We're going to investigate to try to find out the truth.
It's the biggest radio show in the country. That means if you've got a story, there's one place to bring your stories, please. It's to Nolan. Now, next up, sectarianism, it seems, can reach beyond the grave. A Belfast family believe the ghost of a controversial unionist politician who died more than 60 years ago may be haunting them because they're Catholic. From the north of the city, have noticed strange goings-on in the home they say was once owned by Richard Dawson Bates, the First Minister of Home Affairs, in the wake of partition. Let's speak this morning to Carl. Good morning to you, Carl.
Hello, Stephen. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Can this be serious?
Well, I think everybody can be a bit sceptical when it comes to ghosts, but things have been happening in our house over the last few years.
And you're serious, are you? That floors moved off the table?
We're just waiting to find out at the minute when Lorraine comes over, one of the world's top psychic investigators, to our home to find out once and for all really what is happening and who's here and if anything can be done about it.
It's interesting. It's interesting stuff. This, if you believe in ghosts yourself.
So here I am outside the Hughes house, where Nathan is going to share with me what happened during the haunting.
Well, we first began to notice strange things happening in the house when we were about 14 or 15. My brother and I had a Ouija board made for a film project, and at the time I went to Scotland to work on a film, and I called home to see how things were in the house, and that was when we first started noticing that things weren't quite normal. And my mother had an incident in her room where things had been moved around, and the Ouija board was actually positioned outside the bedroom.
My bedroom was getting done up, and I had left bank letters and some personal documents sitting on my bed. The bed had not been made up. I went down the stairs and came back up again to find several bin liners lying on my bed, stretched across my bed. Frightened the wits out of me, and I went around the house actually looking to see if anybody was playing a prank on me, but there was nobody in the house because my son Nathan was in Scotland, Carl was at work, and Anton was at school. So I really have no idea how those black bin liners suddenly appeared in my bed. One of them had a huge hole in the bottom of it. So I really, that's inexplicable, and I feel that is something that has happened through some sort of paranormal experience in the house here.
I heard a very sudden, loud noise from the attic upstairs. It was a very definite human sound, and it sounded just like a body falling over on the ground. I got quite scared at that point, as I knew I was alone, but I had to make sure that it wasn't anyone up there, and I went upstairs to check it out. As I was looking about the attic, everything was fine. The whole place was quite tidy, and there was no large objects on the floor whatsoever.
It was pretty late, it was dark. I was upstairs on the top floor of the house, and I put on a smoke machine, loads of different lights, and was playing music. And I had got this weird feeling, and I looked up into the middle of the bedroom, and there was like a black void, like a silhouette. It looked like somebody was standing in the middle of the room, and there was no smoke in that space. but the lights, when they were shining through the smoke, were making these big beams, and they were moving around the room, but they weren't going through that black void. That was my first really scary moment where I thought, God, is there something actually in this house?
The moment that I realised the house was definitely haunted was one night where I got up to go to the bathroom. It must have been like 3 or 4 in the morning, and on coming back up the stairs into the attic, I was standing on a small landing looking into the bedroom, and I could see a silhouette or a figure standing behind, we had like a snooker table in the bedroom at the time, and there was a figure standing behind the snooker table. And first of all I thought it was someone trying to scare me, but it didn't move, and then it didn't have a face and it didn't have legs. It was like a shadow that had been lifted off the ground and was floating in midair, a head and shoulders and a torso. And I was terrified, and the only thing I could think of doing was, instead of running away from it, was to run towards it for some reason. And as I ran towards it, it just dissipated. It just wasn't there. It just disappeared.
I had a pint glass, like almost like a big large stein glass, like a miniature stein style glass, and it was just filled up with water, cold water. I was drinking it. It was half empty, and just walking out of the back living room and into the kitchen to get a refill of water, and the glass just blew into pieces in my hand. I don't know why it blew into pieces, because there was no change in temperature in the water or in the 2 rooms, or I just don't know what happened. I was holding it in my hand, the whole thing just exploded for no reason. I don't think it's a normal thing to happen. I haven't heard of it happening to anyone else. I work in a bar. I know glass can explode or glass can crack, but only if there's a big temperature change. You know, it wouldn't. I've worked in a bar 10 years. Nothing like that's ever happened to me before.
Then there was other incidences, like my mother saw a full-bodied apparition at her window, and shortly after that, my brother and I, who slept in the attic, woke up to hear a howling or a moaning noise at the skylight in the bedroom. And it was strange, because there's no way any person could be up there, especially at that time of the night.
I got out of bed because I heard this noise at the window, pulled the curtains back, and there was a woman hovering, a woman, like an old woman, long nails, hovering above my windowsill with her nails hanging down. And I so startled that this woman was at my windowsill, sitting on my windowsill or hovering above my windowsill. I pulled the curtains, screamed and pulled the curtains, and jumped back into bed, and really was so fearful I couldn't look out the window again, and then the howling stopped.
It wasn't just myself seeing and hearing things. It wasn't just my brother or my younger brother or my mother. It was everyone. Even my mum's partner at the time had seen an apparition run up the stairs. So at this stage we were getting quite unnerved. We'd had a priest in to bless the house, and nothing was seeming to work. Nothing was seeming to take these things away. And so I'd heard about Lorraine Warren on the TV, and I actually contacted her when I was in my father's house in Dublin. I spoke with her on the phone, and she gave us advice over the phone. She worked with us on a weekly basis, and things began to settle down. When we were selling our house, and just shortly after we had made the realisation about the history of the house and who'd lived in the house previously, then all of a sudden things began to kick up again. So at that stage we called Lorraine Warren in to help, and she came from Connecticut in America, and she did an investigation here with Tony Spira, and they walked around the house. We had reporters here, we had a TV crew here, and she did say that there was a spirit in the house. In fact, she said there was 2 spirits in the house. One of the spirits was a male figure, and then another spirit who was a female figure. And she said that the male figure, unfortunately, was in league with the demonic. He was an evil man. The female figure was an older lady who actually had a protective energy, and she was looking after us. So this was all quite interesting. and she picked up on certain areas in the house, specific areas where incidences had happened to us, and was able to report back on those. And the most haunted location she picked up on was the top floor of the house, which is actually the attic, the room that my brother and I sleep in, and that's where the apparition was seen mostly, and the noises were heard, the breathing was heard. So I found all that quite significant.
When Lorraine Warren was here, she did see a man standing at the top of the stairs, and she said it wasn't a good spirit, it was an evil spirit. A person who did not want us in this house. It's possibly because of religion, I'm not sure, but that's what I felt, or what she felt at the time.
I discovered the history of the house by total coincidence. At the time I was studying law and I was in my final year, and I was writing up a piece, an assignment on corruption within the police force in Northern Ireland throughout history. And at the same time we were selling our house, so we had the deeds through and we were ready to move. In my coursework I was writing about a figure, a political figure known as Sir Richard Dawson Bates, and he was particularly sectarian and bigoted towards Catholics. And through total coincidence I was looking in the deeds of the house, because I was also studying conveyancing, and I just out of interest was reading through the previous residents of the house and discovered that Sir Richard Dawson Bates had also lived in our house in and around the 1920s, which was quite a coincidence. And I noticed also that when him and his wife left the house, that the house was left to a Protestant church, an Orthodox version of the Protestant church, and the house became a manse house, so no other Catholic had ever lived in the house, ever. We were the first Catholic family to ever move into this house, and it just seemed highly coincidental that, being the only Catholics to have lived in the house of a previous sectarian Protestant government minister, and then all these strange supernatural things are happening in the house. Could this be him that is haunting us, or trying to say something to us about living in his house? The only strange thing that I noticed after Lorraine Warren came to the house was one evening a couple of months later. I was watching a documentary where Lorraine Warren featured in the documentary about another case, a famous case that she investigated. I was sitting with my two brothers, and the moment that Lorraine Warren came on the screen, the very moment that she appeared on the screen, the DVD stopped and the tray came out. Now, my two brothers thought that I was playing a joke on them, but actually we looked and the remote controls were sitting on the coffee table in front of us. So I picked up the DVD and looked at it. It was a brand new DVD, no scratches on it. There's no reason why at that moment the DVD could have come out of the tray. It was just highly coincidental. The house itself does have its own unique energy. Anyone that comes here or who has visited the house, even if we don't tell them that there's something strange happening here, they usually pick up on it. We have had visitors who have seen things move, who've seen or heard things in the hallway when there's no one else there. It is an unusual place, but at the same time our family feel very safe here, because whilst lots of strange incidents have actually happened, no one has been physically harmed. So maybe the spirit just wants us to know that it's there. I do believe in ghosts. I think that there is an energy that leaves a human body, or that part of your personality, that conscious part of your body, leaves when you die, and in some cases, if it's strong enough, it can linger on in a location or in an area. I don't always believe people initially when they tell me that they've had a paranormal encounter, even though I believe I've had one myself. I think that, again, it's something that you have to experience personally in order to believe it. I'd say for anyone listening to me or anyone listening to someone else who's had a paranormal encounter, it is something that's very hard to believe. But like I say, once it happens to you, then you can only open your mind to it and become a believer of it.
Now, it's not just your average Joe who has had a paranormal encounter.
And I thought there was some optical illusion that would go away. And then I looked again and they were still there.